Hello, we are starting another session of SCT Experience Academy Cloudification track. I'm Thiago Brun. I'm here with Alex Emmermann, Business Development for Cloud Solutions at Telestream, to talk about cloud migration challenges and how Telestream is helping M&E industry to accelerate cloud adoption. Hello, Alex. Thank you for collaborating with SCT community.
Thanks, Thiago. How are you?
Great. So, Alex, Telestream has several solutions that can be used in several areas and workflows, such as QC, transcoding, subtitling, and others. Thinking about that, which of those solutions are ready to be used in cloud, either completely or partially in a hybrid environment?
They're all available today. We've got transcoding. We actually have multiple transcoding solutions. That's how Telestream got started. A lot of the industry uses our Vantage system on-prem. So we have a service called Vantage Cloud Port, which allows you to take all of those workflows that companies rely on and shift them and execute them from the cloud using cloud resources and attaching to cloud storage. We have another service, which is a fully cloud-first transcoding service that is API driven, and it's meant for folks that write their own workflows programmatically. And we'll have a new version of that service in January that has a lot of broadcast capability, broadcast format capability that's not available from any other vendors today. Our QC service is based on VidChecker right now. We also own all the technology from Aurora, another one of the major QC software in the industry. We will be taking the best of both of those products and putting them into a new QC service, which will be available early next year as well. But we have a QC service and transcoding available right now that are available in the clouds. We also have a monitoring service, which allows you to monitor live streams, and you can select which cloud and which location to monitor from, and you can monitor from multiple locations. So it's great for streaming services, live events. You can monitor the contribution feeds. It's a very powerful service based on technology that Telestream acquired when it acquired IneoQuest and Tektronix. We have a captioning service that adds captions to video files. You upload the file to the cloud, you tell the service to caption it, it strips the audio, sends it to a speech-to-text algorithm that converts it to text, and then the text is organized into caption files, and you can download the captions in a variety of different captioning formats. We also have a new service that's launching very soon, like within the next month or two, called Playback Service, and it allows you to play files remotely that are living in the cloud that are sitting in formats that are not playable easily. So normally what you would have to do is download the entire file, which sometimes is gigabytes worth of data, just to watch one small section that you're interested in. Now you can browse to the file using your browser, hit play, zoom immediately to the space that you want to watch and watch it. It's a very powerful little utility, which we think will be a really nice complement to our other suite of tools. You asked also about hybrid environments. We allow a lot of flexibility in the way our customers deploy and use our cloud services. The cloud services are SaaS, so we host and operate everything. But if the company has a special relationship or an enterprise agreement with one of the cloud vendors, we can we can launch the resources for compute in their virtual private cloud. So it means it leverages their account, their discount, it gives them the cloud spend that sometimes they need in order to honor a contract. We developed our own autoscaler. So it means that we've ported it now to 3 or 4 different public clouds. We can launch our services in Google, AWS, Azure, IBM Cloud, Digital Rapids, and if someone else brings another cloud provider that makes sense for us to take a look at, we can port our scaling and storage connectivity to those services. We can also do private clouds using the same technology. So if somebody has a large private cloud farm and wants to run our services, The orchestration would still be done from our cloud, but all the resources for compute and doing the transcoding and QC and whatever other services they want to use can run in their private cloud as well.
Well, thank you very much. In your point of view, what are the main challenges the companies face when migrating a workflow to the cloud, especially taking into consideration the infrastructure limitations in developing countries?
I'm going to start with the developing countries part. The infrastructure has to be there in order for it to make sense. And there's two key parts of that. One is you need a data center that you can rely on, or multiple really, in order to give you some redundancy. And you have to have reliable connectivity to that data center. Once those are in place, then you start a next set of challenges, which is the whole how do I get started piece, and does it make sense? One of the first things that happen when people look to migrate things to the cloud is they have trouble justifying the costs. There's a few costs that are hidden that people don't often consider. I've gone through this migration myself personally. I was running development organizations for most of my career, and near the end, I always got this challenge about, should this be running in the cloud or on-prem? And what I found is if you take a quick glance at it, it always seems cheaper to just buy an extra piece of hardware, host it in your premises, and the costs look very small when you look at that capital expense against an ongoing operating expense. What people don't look at is they're not looking at the full cost of ownership when you have the on-prem service. So there's a lot of things that you deal with on-prem that you wouldn't have to deal with when you're dealing with the cloud. One of those is redundancy. So often it's not about buying one piece of hardware, now you have to buy two. And in order to be fair, you have to include the cost of the data center, which is housing it. So, if it's 5 or 10 rack units, that's 5 or 10 rack units out of whatever your data center space is. And usually it's times 2, because you're not just going to have single redundancy for something. You're not going to have a single unit that runs something important. The cost of the staff to maintain that is often overlooked as well. If you start to distribute those costs over each rack unit, you start to add up and accrue more. The travel to and from those data centers can be very expensive. I had data centers running in multiple parts of the globe, and I had to send folks to visit those data centers or pay local resources to handle them. When I started adding it all up, these are the things that had me tilt to the cloud. There's one other key one which makes the cloud really attractive. When you have a problem in a data center, you have to have spare equipment on hand and available to put in the case of an emergency. That's another expense that people don't calculate, is that cost of extra pieces sitting around idle. That's something you don't need with the cloud, and often you don't have what you need just handy. So if something happens in an emergency, you can react very quickly with the cloud by spawning another resource or replacing a given resource with something larger and more powerful. It gives you a lot of agility and ability to make decisions and pivot. In particular, when you have a high growth company, some of our customers right now during COVID have seen growth in their business of 20 to 25x. It's difficult to plan for that kind of growth. But when you're in the cloud, a lot of the elasticity and flexibility of being in the cloud means that your customers don't have to deal with a lot of the problems with scaling. Those things are put on vendors like us and vendors like their chosen cloud provider. So if you have, in the case of the customer I'm thinking of, whose business has gone up 25 times just during COVID, we've handled all that workload for them, and their cloud vendor is dealing with all the storage increases and all of the compute increases without any effort on their part. They get to focus on their business and driving marketing and developing their solution and adding features that people are asking for, all these new customers. So one of the other challenges is you need additional staff that understands the cloud. So when you're moving from on-prem to cloud, the same people that were your real success stories and driving your business on-prem are often not the people that you need when you're dealing in the cloud. Their skill sets are a bit different. The thinking is a bit different. The way you design things is different. You need somebody who understands how to really leverage the power of the cloud to get the most out of it. If you just take everything and lift it up and shift it over into the cloud, it's often not, you're not taking advantage of the benefits, but you're really wasting a lot of the capability. There's also a limitation. Not every capability is available in the cloud. So for M&E, for example, there's a few watermarking services. I'm just pulling one thing out of out of blue, but you need to look through your workflow and see what all the steps are and make sure that each of those steps is available in the cloud. So I have one customer that would very much like to move to the cloud, and one of the watermarking services that they'd like to use is not available in the cloud yet. So that's holding them back on that workflow. So they're moving things that don't go through that watermarking service. But it's just an example.
What are your recommendations for companies that are adopting new solutions and want to be closer to a cloud-ready architecture?
Well, I'd recommend that people start in the cloud versus trying to start something on-premise and then move it to the cloud. The way you design things when you start in the cloud is usually different than when you have to start on-prem and shift something over. You start with the storage and where you're going to store, selecting a cloud vendor that makes sense. One of the other things that I'd recommend is to be careful using proprietary technology that locks you into one cloud vendor. Sometimes it makes sense and there's a service that's just perfect for what you need and really accelerates you. But you've got to understand that that's a trade-off with your ability to look at other cloud vendors in the future, and the ability for you to move to someone else if they indeed become a better partner for you. In Brazil, for example, Google, Azure, and AWS are there already. But I see an acceleration in cloud service in Latin America, for example, where I think in the next 3 years, there's going to be a lot more data centers and a lot more capacity down there. So if you're going to start something new, I would definitely be looking at a cloud-first solution now. That should be probably the initial thought versus the backup thought at this point in 2020.
And help the end users to change the culture, because on the on-prem side, they have the resource they use as they want based on their demands. They have that limited capacity.
Mm-hmm.
When they go to the cloud, the capacity can be unlimited.
Yes.
And the link of how you use the resources with how much it's going to cost, this is not very straightforward for the end users, as they didn't have to worry about that in the past.
Yeah.
So to establish some boundaries and to really have a kind of a showback and a chargeback tool that give them the capability to analyze and see and plan how they are going to use that resources compared to that baseline that you obviously had when you did that business case, is one of the key points for the success of sustaining that operation in the cloud. So
we've approached that from two angles. One is we've moved to what I'll call an on-demand model. It basically means you consume resources and then you get billed for it at the end of the month without any commitment or any need to really make a large commit to us. What we've found is a lot of our customers really welcome that because they don't know how much they need yet, and they don't know how much it's going to cost when they actually start putting workflows in there. So what it allows them to do is start migrating certain things over, using it on a small scale basis, and then understanding the relationship between this number of content hours and this number of dollars for their particular workflows. So as they start shifting things over, they can plan and say, okay, I understand that I did 1,000 hours last month and it cost X dollars. Therefore, if I'm going to add 5,000 more hours, I can start to understand what the ratio or relationship with cost is. And that still gives them the ability to really flex when they have very heavy content days, when things are really crazy, and then there's very quiet days, and you can handle these high peaks and of content, processing, for example. We have other customers whose content volumes are much more predictable and much more steady, and they desire a more fixed pricing method. So we have in several of our services, we allow what we call a reserved or slot model, where you can pay for a fixed amount of capacity. You lose the flexibility of going up and down easily, but because we're reserving instances in the cloud for folks on many cases. And that allows them to flatten out the cost and have reliable capacity. You can still make some adjustments to it to go up and down, but it gives them a fixed amount of cost that they can predict for a fixed amount of capacity. So between those two options, our customers usually will lean one way or the other and say, you know what, let's just get started with the on-demand model because we don't know what our volume is going to be, but we can figure it out. And thank you for letting us try it just a little bit at a time. Or no, we want something very fixed, so let's go with the slot model. And we can handle, our billing system handles both.
Okay, Alex, I think that we are coming to the end. Thank you very much for your participation here.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. I appreciate it.